The ongoing COVID crisis has thrown the global energy sector into undeniable turmoil. This presents countries such as Trinidad and Tobago with the challenge of addressing new levels of difficulty when it comes to a major driver of economic activity. Even before the onset of the pandemic, there were indications that significant reductions in revenue would emerge out of major shifts in energy markets around the world. The finance minister recently estimated that resulting revenue shortfalls can be in the order of up to $5 billion at the end of the current financial year. Now, with COVID-19, the outlook remains even less impressive. There has been a dampening of demand because of reduced industrial and economic activity, and this has led to lower prices and reduced production. In a sense, these developments could not have come at a worse time for Trinidad and Tobago, but economic activity must still go on. Good evening and welcome to Fueling the Economy in the midst of the COVID crisis. I am Wesley Gibbings on TTT. You can also follow us live on Talk City 91.1 FM and on TTT Live online on Facebook. With me this evening to discuss such a scenario are Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Franklin Khan, and President of the National Gas Company, Mark Loquan. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Welcome and thank you very much, and good evening to Trinidad and Tobago.
Minister Khan, paint a picture of the current global reality and see if you can provide us with a link to what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to the energy sector.
Well, it doesn't paint a rosy picture, I want to be honest. And even before the coronavirus, we were starting to see depressed prices, both in terms of natural gas and oil. In terms of natural gas, production was starting to ramp up, and there was a market shift where, in the past, you were having very high prices in the Asian market. That seems to have been normalizing in terms of Europe, Asia, and North America. Production is going up significantly. There's new capacity now in Australia. The Qataris are ramping up. The Russians are ramping up. And so generally speaking, LNG prices have been fairly soft. Added to which everybody is aware of the shale situation in the United States. America is now a net importer of LNG. When we built our Train 4 plant, we were the largest exporter of LNG into the United States. So all that has changed the market conditions. With regards to oil, there's the price war just before this corona hit with the level of intensity it has between the Saudis and the Russians.
We seem to have lost the minister there, but we have Mark Loquan, who is also on the line. And Mr. Loquan, and maybe we can ask Mr. Loquan to continue that conversation with respect to the impact of these global developments on the Trinidad and Tobago energy sector.
The biggest impact, obviously, would be in terms of government revenue. I don't think we have reached the stage as yet where the producers and the upstream producers and the downstream producers are in a decision-making mode to see whether they want to stop operations. So we're far from that at this point in time. In any industry, any big company or international company, business model has to cater for periods of depressed oil prices and depressed commodity prices to stay in the business. So it is nothing unusual to go through this cyclic pricing scenario, which is like a sine curve.
Yes, but Mr. Khan, the COVID-19...
To the low prices.
Minister Khan, But COVID-19 has now intervened, and one of the outcomes of the crisis is the fact that there is a lowering of demand because of reduced economic activity in those countries affected, the big ones in particular. So how is that featuring in that whole dynamic you're describing there?
Well, obviously it will have a negative effect because you need demand. You need energy demand. And if you don't have the demand, and in particular China, and look how it is affecting Europe. Europe is a manufacturing hub also. The United States hasn't cut back on its production capacity in any significant way. But definitely China, the East, and Europe. So it will have some lasting effects. As the Prime Minister keeps saying, we do not know how long this thing will last. But if you study the history of world economics in the last century or so, every time you have a depression or a recession, the pickup period is very intense. So you go from very, very low activity to a boom of activity. So it really is a bust and boom scenario. So depending on how long this depression or this low period lasts, what you could see happening in the future as to when would that be, whether it's 6 months, a year from now, you will expect the pickup to be quite intense. And then that will affect commodity prices again on the upward swing.
But what kind of forecasting is being done? I've seen some forecasts by international agencies that are seeing a dramatic decline in growth estimates for the current year, and also with respect to the massive decline in financial fortunes that would take the world recession into territory that we have not been in a very, very long time over a sustained period.
Well, I mean, those predictions are based on very, very limited data over an extremely short period of time. So while they seem to be, the trajectory seems to be accurate, I will still reserve my long-term comments on those. Because, for example, look, this afternoon Trump was saying he hopes America could be back online by Easter. I mean, that is, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but that is a ridiculous statement. But having said so, America is planning for a very, very early recovery. China is now getting back to normalcy, for want of a better word. The epicenter is Europe. They're saying the next epicenter will be the United States. So there are still a lot of uncertainties, but bearing in mind, this period of corona, or COVID-19, is only about 2 months old. So we just have to monitor it on a day-to-day basis. And while we are concerned about the economic impact, as the Prime Minister rightfully says in Trinidad, and I think all countries, the biggest concern now is the health of the planet, the health of the human race.
Yes, and of course, in order to sustain a certain quality of life for citizens, there would need to be a certain level of basic economic activity to carry the country forward. There is, of course, resort to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and I know that...
Yeah, that is going to Parliament tomorrow.
Yeah, that's going to go to Parliament, and... Yeah, because as the Prime Minister said, it's a rainy day fund, and if ever there was a rainy day...
Well, this is a stormy day.
Yes, exactly. Now, you were talking about world prices a short while ago. Are you seeing a continued low price scenario? I mean, the low price scenarios set in before the current crisis and has increasingly become a feature of our reality. Are you seeing a continued scenario such as that?
Well, I mean, oil today was down to WTI and Brent was in the 20s. I mean, I think once this COVID-19 thing settles down, I think it will bounce back up. We cannot have a world economy based on oil prices in the 20s. But having said that, the situation is so fluid. You cannot make long-term predictions at this point in time, because what we're seeing here is not prices responding to economic forces. This is almost like extraneous circumstances. You are dealing with an international health crisis that could, I mean, in the worst case, could cripple the human race and dispense of civilization as we know it. So all this economic talk could be useless. So what we have to do is control the virus. as a matter of course. And once you control the virus, the economy will bounce back. But at this point in time, to make these sort of economic predictions, to me, while it is necessary, it could turn out to be very futile.
Now, and also, all of this is happening at a time of transition for the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. We are now getting used to life without a refinery, and we don't know what's going to come out of that. We are growing used to different realities with respect to LNG demand in the rest of the world, and the disappearance or reduction in the prospects for external markets. So it's not actually happening at a time when Trinidad and Tobago has been standing still. It has, in a sense, been preparing for a different dispensation. What are the things that are in place now that would comfort you that Trinidad and Tobago is in a situation that it can emerge out of this in a relatively good state?
Well, just some from the oil side. I mean, in a very uncanny way, we were doing better without the refinery than with the refinery. Because Petrotrin was losing $2 billion a year. Heritage has made $800 million in its first year by the export of crude only. Heritage was able to service in its entirety Petrotrin's loan with still a surplus of $800 million to declare as profits. So from a purely commercial point of view, the shutting down of the refinery for save and accept the social consequences to it is a good commercial decision. Once we get the refinery operational again under a new business model with a new entity who will be taking all the commercial risk in terms of supply and demand and markets, I think the country will be in a better state of affairs.
But does it make a difference? In the current, under current conditions, does it make a difference that we no longer have a functioning oil refinery?
I mean, to the exchequer, it actually be in a better place.
But certainty of supply and all those issues.
And economic activity in the south, obviously that has a negative effect. So what we are saying is that if the refinery becomes operational under patriotic, I mean, that will be very good for the economy. If patriotic, through their new business model, could generate a profit for themselves, they are a private company, I wish them well. And I hope they do. And then the economy will come back to boom, especially down in the Southland.
Yes. Okay. Now, recently, there were some issues that were brought to light by the Petroleum Dealers Cooperative Society Limited regarding essentially the lubricants market. Has that situation been resolved?
No, I mean, I take serious umbrage to the Petroleum Dealers Cooperative Society Limited. They have influence over 3 gas stations, so there's absolutely no impact on the fuel supply. They have the monopoly for lubricants from NP. That contract expired, and NP has submitted to them a new contract. So if you do not like certain terms in the contract, that is a commercial discussion between yourself and your supplier, between Petroleum Dealers Cooperative Society and NP. Why should that be aired out in the press? And then you want to hold the nation to ransom by saying you're shutting down in 3 stations because of the COVID situation. To me, that is untenable, it is uncouth, and it is unethical.
But I think it's going to have an impact on the quality of the negotiations going forward?
Well, I mean, as a minister, I do not involve myself in commercial negotiations between private entities. And even though they are state companies, they are by definition under the Companies Act private companies. So I let them go ahead with the commercial negotiation. But what I'm saying is in poor taste. And you could ask Mr. Lokwande, a company in the gas value chain will never act in that way.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to come to Mr. Lokwan. I'm not sure if we have him on the line now because there are very specific questions to be addressed with respect Oh, okay. We don't have Mr. Loquan on the line yet, but Minister, I'm sure that given the insights you have into what's happening there, the sort of repositioning or reframing of the role of NGC, all of this is happening is coinciding with those efforts by NGC to expand the range of services. I know that there were overtures with respect to Guyana, Ghana, and these things. How is the current situation impacting on that?
Well, I mean, NGC has to get involved in the entire gas value chain. I think they have moved too late. They're under the directive of Corporation Seoul and the Minister of Energy of various administrations. NGC was set up initially to be a gas aggregator. You purchase gas at X, you sell it at X plus 2, and you make a profit. In the decades gone by, that profit was substantial. The dividends to the government were exorbitant in some cases and very large in other cases and reasonable in some cases. However, because of the changing dynamics of the gas value chain, NGC now has to rethink its business model. As a result of that, NGC has now invested over the last decade or so into upstream ventures because they have equity in some of the blocks upstream. They continue to be the gas aggregator. They have shareholding in Train 1 and Train 4, and they have the rights now under the new agreements that the government negotiated recently to market their own share of LNG. And obviously, they cannot stay in this geographic space as a company if they want a long-term future. So they are looking at Guyana, they are looking at Ghana, and the PPGPL, which is a subsidiary of NGC, recently acquired a company called Twin Eagles out of Houston in the liquid, the gas liquids market in the United States, Mexico, and the Northern Caribbean.
Okay, Minister Khan, we're going to attempt to reach Mr. Loquan now, but we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we'll resume the discussion.
Okay, take care. Thanks.
Take care.
When pain feels this tough, choose Panadol Ultra. Fights 5 types of tough pain, including migraine headache. Panadol Ultra. When pain is gone, life takes its place.
Women's History Month to me means progress of women around the world, having a career, and of course facing issues pertaining to equality in the workplace. As a Muslim woman, because of the stigma that is attached to Muslim women in terms of oppression, so to speak, I think I am very much empowered, having a career, maintaining that religious aspect, and still being myself. So I think that this is a good opportunity for women, and it's something that needs to surely be highlighted in the society.
My household didn't have television, but my grandmother had a television. And all she could have seen was TTT. There was something called Party Flavor. It's the first time I saw rap, reggae, and dancehall videos in my life.
That make us dream in a way, you know? It make us dream, and it didn't seem like the world was so far outside of ourselves. They look like us, they sound like us. And so, yeah, we feel like we can achieve. Well, I'm Mohammed.
And I'm Lou.
And we are Freetown.
And we believe that our stories start right here on TTT.
News happens anytime, anywhere. And when it happens, we are there. We report the news in real time. TTT News. Connect.
Welcome back to Fueling the Economy in the midst of COVID-19. I'm Wesley Gibbings, and on the line, because we're discussing the energy sector, the impact of the pandemic on the energy sector, we have the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Franklin Khan, and now we have President of the National Gas Company, Mr. Mark Loquan. Welcome, Mr. Loquan.
Yes, good night, everyone.
Great. Well, before we were able to link with you, the Minister and I were having a conversation about the impact of the world environment in the energy sector and its impact on Trinidad and Tobago. And we were dovetailing the discussion with a focus on the National Gas Company,
Right.
essentially saying that the NGC has been in the process of transition, preparing itself for a new kind of modus operandi. What is in place, and to what extent is the momentum set over the past months being impacted by the current crisis?
Well, I should probably rewind a little bit here because the NGC has had to focus on trying to secure business for the gas for the future operations of Trinidad and Tobago, because if you look back at 2015, 2016, a lot of the contracts were coming to an end. So in terms of securing the future, we've had a lot of activity around negotiating new gas supplies for the future in the upstream, and that would have started in 2017 and continued for 2 years, actually 3 years, up to completing of Shell contracts last year. And then we would have had in parallel several contracts to be negotiated downstream, which were expiring. So you would obviously have seen a lot of activity, first of all, in securing business for the future. And that's one element as compared to jumping in and starting to enter into growth equations and so on and trying to do all kinds of things. And that is a necessary step that we had to take. While, of course, the new contracts started to kick in from January 2019, and therefore the whole model of NGC in the industry could not just take on a pure aggregation role. When the prices of gas that you're buying on the market here from the upstream has risen significantly in pricing, and at the same time we are trying to maintain 11 ammonia plants, 7 methanol plants, power and everything, and trying to make sure that we can at least survive the coming period. So I'm talking right now before COVID and oil prices came along. That was the world that we had to face. And of course, even before those elements came in, it was clearly evident that if we have to continue to be a critical part of the energy industry here, you had to look beyond the pure buying and selling of gas and transportation of gas. And that's why, based on what the minister said, there have been investments across the entire value chain, ranging from, TSP and Block 1A and 2C and 3A and so on. SECC. So we have been positioning ourselves across from the upstream side of the business, as well as the midstream, where we, of course, have the 10% share in Train 1 and 11.1 in the Train 4. They have been conversations going on for the past couple of years in terms of looking at value across the LNG chain, which would have been done in tandem, of course, and led by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And at the same time, we are also positioned in the downstream through methanol at the moment, and we are also participating more and more in the LNG marketing and trading and third-party trading that we never really used. We used to do it, but of course it has grown significantly and will continue to grow. So in terms of the question of positioning for the future, it really has been establishing a role that continues to be one of aggregation, but certainly one that is more focused towards generating value for Trinidad and Tobago across the entire gas value chain. And at the same time, trying to secure the business for the future with several expired contracts that have been coming to an end with a lot of negotiations in those areas. And also negotiations around Train 1, which has also been, that expired in September 2018 and continued on arrangements up to now. So there's been a lot of conversations around Train 1 as well. So I think the answer to the question is that we cannot remain as a pure aggregation business and hope to survive when the margins that you have in the aggregation business are significantly different, much lower. And so therefore you have to position across the chain. And if you look at some of the players in this business, like the BPs and Shells and so on, that's exactly how they are also positioned. They are positioned as integrated gas players.
Minister, in order to facilitate this expanded role and across the value chain, the energy value chain, there would need to be a sort of policy environment and an environment that would be conducive to these kinds of actions by NGC. What are the support systems via policy, via legislation, or whatever else is required to have a conducive environment? What is the current state of play?
Well, when it comes to the whole issue of the role of NGC, that was certainly one of the big questions that I faced coming into the job in 2016. Where there was a question around, what role do we play given the changes in the environment? And I think part of the policy that was clearly articulated by the government is that NGC remains as an aggregator in the business. What I'm enunciating here is that apart from that, the policy of where you want to position yourself to derive value in the LNG chain has also been part of the discussions over the last 2 years. And you would have seen articles and announcements around how the shareholders and the government would have been in discussions around establishing increased equity LNG across Train 1 to 4, for example. There would have been policies around that. Yes. There would have been policies around the whole areas of power and how energy efficiency can come to bear and play a greater role going forward. And I think those are some of the big ticket areas, how we handle power in terms of power tranches being borne, and the burden not only being borne by the people of Trinidad and Tobago, but of course a wider group, including the upstream players, as well as the whole focus on the use of power and energy efficiency and renewables and things like that would have important bearings going forward.
Okay, well, Mr. Lokwan, you've answered a question that was actually put to the minister. So I want to give the minister the opportunity to chime in now on this question of the policy and legislative framework and other features of an environment that's conducive to an expanded role for the NGC across the value chain. Minister?
Well, as I said earlier, there will be no legislative solution to the issues that NGC face. NGC is a business and they have to operate under a business environment. NGC has been successful in remodeling their business strategy and in the business scenario. NGC, as Mark rightfully said a while ago, can no longer to continue to be in the aggregation business. That served them well for decades, but they now have to look at the entire value chain. They have equity upstream, they have equity in the Novos gas in the Gulf of Paria, they have equity in Atlantic, in Trains 1 and Train 4, and the government is working within the negotiation. There's something called the Empowered Negotiation Team, which is dealing with the restructuring of Atlantic, which is co-chaired by myself and Mr. Young, and we are working to get increased equity for LNG. in the restructured Atlantic scenario. So all in all, NGC, while it faces challenges both domestically and globally, I think their new business model and their new business strategy will take them along the right trajectory. And once this whole volatile market situation settles, both in terms of supply and demand, the world economy and COVID-19 in particular, I see a bright future for LNG's new business model.
So, Minister, and what of the continued role of Point Lisas in all of this? How do you see Point Lisas featuring in the near future?
Again, you cannot get into a business and hope that the business environment will remain unchanged for decades. When we got into Point Lisas was the flagship industrial estate in the world. It was the single largest producer of both ammonia and methanol from a single site anywhere in the world. That was premised on cheap gas, abundant gas, and incentives for the sector. Trinidad's claim to fame in the international energy market has been Point Lisas. The business dynamics of the viability of Point Lisas has changed. In two counts. One, the cost of gas internally in Trinidad and Tobago has gotten more expensive because we are no longer finding big fields. We are finding small fields, and small fields per unit cost to develop is much higher. So the upstreamers made a case, and a viable case that is, that they needed higher prices for their gas.
Okay.
By the same token, the downstreamers were saying, gas is available cheap in the United States. I can take my plant to the United States, so I cannot afford exorbitant prices for gas. And that's where it came, and virtually, that scenario virtually squeezed NGC out of the business and the gas value chain. So NGC now had to cut their margins as the gas aggregator to allow for the value chain to survive. And as I always keep saying, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. So from now on, Trinidad and Tobago's government policy is that any form of negotiation, be it upstream, midstream, or downstream, has to take place in the context of maintaining the gas value chain as a robust entity and a viable entity. Because without downstream, there's no upstream. And without upstream, there's no downstream. Without upstream and downstream, there can't be any midstream. So everybody has to realize that their very survival depends on the survival of the other entity. And that's its fundamental business principle under which we have to operate now.
Okay, Minister Khan and Mr. Lokwan, will you stay on the line? We're going to be right back. The discussion is fueling the economy in the midst of COVID-19. We'll be right back.
The winning numbers in the National Lottery online draws for Tuesday, 24th March 2020. At 10:30 a.m., play away the number 20 dog. Pick two numbers 2 and 29 in that order. Mega Ball called. Pick 4 numbers 9, 0, 1 and 6 in that order. At 1 p.m., play away the number 9 cattle. Mega Ball called. Pick 2 numbers 15 and 3 in that order. Pick 4 numbers 0, 3, 8 and 5 in that order. At 4 p.m., play away the number 18 Waterboat Mega Ultra Ball called. Pick 2 numbers 30 and 29 in that order. Mega Ball called. Pick 4 numbers 6, 5, 4 and 5 in that order. At 7 p.m., play away the number 4 Deadman Mega Ultra Ball called. Pick 2 numbers 34 and 25 in that order. Pick 4 numbers 0, 2, 2 and 2 in that order. Cashpot numbers 7, 8, 15, 17 and 13 in any order. Multiplier 3.
TTT News, delivering more news at more times to more people. TTT News, reporting on the people, events, and issues that affect your life. TTT News, online, and fully interactive. TTT News. Connect.
Welcome back to Fueling the Economy in the midst of COVID-19. I'm Wesley Gibbings on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and on TTT Live online on Facebook. On the line with me this evening are Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Franklin Kahn, and President of the National Gas Company, Mr. Mark Loquan. Mr. Loquan, we were talking about the role of NGC in the changing environment. And some of the demands and some of the developments in this sector relate to issues that for a very long time did not occupy the public imagination. Issues of the environment, for example, climate change, the carbon footprint of industries and so on. What is NGC's predisposition? What is NGC's outlook when it comes to those issues?
With respect to the clean energy issues, just to
Yes.
verify. Yes, well, I think if you look at the challenges of energy going forward for the next couple of decades, it's not only about increased production and demand, it's really about also how do we continue to provide energy to the world, which is, of course, increasing in population, and also trying to struggle with climate change issues and convert coal to natural gas, for example, as you see in China with deliberate policies around environmental issues. How do you kind of approach this issue? And the fact is, the CO2 emissions in the Paris Agreement cannot be met unless you actually take some really serious and drastic measures to get stay closer to 1.5%. Compared to the 2% targets, because the fact is the CO2 emissions are increasing beyond that target since the Paris Agreement was made. NGC's position, I think we are fairly well positioned with its footprint in CNG, with its focus now on energy efficiency and renewables soon to come through our subsidiary National Energy. And the fact that we are in LNG, where we have already formed strategic partnerships with China, for example, which was one of the big demand areas. In fact, up to from the negotiations with the GOT team, as the minister referred, we actually got some cargoes from Train 1 and was actually commingling it with the Chinese partner that we have in Train 1 and supplying it to the world. You see that so I think the LNG market is the fact that we're positioned in the LNG chain, CNG, reforestation, and positioning with sequestration studies with universities. I think we're all along the chain where I think we can, even as a group, as an NGC group, and not only as an NGC company, we can even forge even greater headway in these areas, not only locally, but certainly in the Caribbean region as well, where we see that a lot of the islands in the Caribbean region are very susceptible to climate change, as you know. They have already focused on renewables and clean energy initiatives. I think the time is right for Trinidad also to play an interesting role in the Caribbean region. And I know the government is also focused with some Caribbean energy policy there. So I think that should fit well.
Yes, now, Minister, along those lines, one of the things observed during the course of this COVID-19 crisis is the fact that emissions have actually dropped considerably, and I think that part of that had to do with the disruptions in productive activity in China. And Trinidad and Tobago has been part of the international negotiations with respect to reducing carbon emissions. Are you seeing a way forward beyond, in the midst of COVID-19, there's perhaps very little space to engage countries internationally very aggressively on this. But are you seeing this moving forward in a different way post-COVID-19?
Well, I mean, the decarbonization of the world has always been pre-COVID, post-COVID. It was immaterial of COVID. The issue is two things. I always make the point. I mean, the point is losing its validity as time passes. But Trinidad is one of the few countries in the world. I think there are only 5 countries in the world that generates all its power from natural gas. And even though natural gas is a fossil fuel, it is the cleanest of the fossil fuel. Because I always make the statement also that what is the sense of an electric car when you're generating the power from coal? As happens in a lot of power plants in China. But having said that, we have signed on to Paris, where we must have 10% of our power generation renewables by 2021. We have recently awarded a contract. We have to have the official ceremony for that, but this COVID situation overtook us with BP and Shell, a consortium, for a 150 megawatt solar plant in Point Lisas, and that will satisfy the 10% requirement by 2021. When we were in London 2 weeks ago with the Prime Minister, or 3 weeks, and time is flying so fast, the president of BP, Mr. Looney, made a very interesting remark, and it really shocked me. And he said, we have to stop comparing natural gas to coal, and we now have to focus on the decarbonization of natural gas, which means that technology will take us to hydrogen. And because hydrogen is the future of energy. There are now some initiatives to so do, but that's the technology of the future. The other thing is about carbon capture. The Ministry of Energy is working on a plan. I think it's going a little too slow. I think I'll have to accelerate it. But we have to capture the carbon emissions out of Point Lisas. We run a pipeline into the oil fields of southwestern Trinidad, Forest Reserve, Faizabad, Point Fortin, and re-inject that carbon dioxide into the oil reservoirs for enhanced oil recovery. So we'll be doing two things here. We'll be getting more oil out of the ground, and we'll also be reducing our carbon footprint. And to me, that is the greatest piece of synergy that could come out of this carbon capture thing. And I think that there are some entities that are pushing at it. It is going a little too slow, and probably I'll be the first to admit, probably with not the gung-ho way in which the state should be embracing that. So I intend to embrace that with both arms as we come out of this period here and start to get some of those projects off the ground.
Thank you, Minister Khan. Mr. Lokwan, how much of all of the ministers spoken about is on the agenda for NGC? And how high up the totem pole is it in priorities?
Yeah, I think we've already, we're still on topic of clean energy and not all the other things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think the topic of sequestration, carbon capture, I think we have had less involvement in those areas. I think we've been more involved in the reforestation and sequestration studies with the university. Through our national energy subsidiary, they are directly involved with the Ministry of Energy with the renewables project. So I think that is another area. And then the whole topic of energy efficiency, where we've been working with the Ministry of Public Utilities. Those are the areas that both the National Energy and NGC has been part of the Cabinet appointed committee to effect some changes there that would focus a lot more on energy efficiency issues as well as renewables. And then, of course, the CNG issue where we have, several, a big focus on replacing the existing fossil fuel vehicles that are in the market with CNG vehicles.
But it looks as if the CNG project would need a little new momentum or renewed momentum.
Well, I would let Curtis Mohammed, the president of CNG, speak more about these issues. But you would see that there's been a lot of focus on that. I think quite recently you would have seen us pass 1 million liters per gallon equivalent on CNG. It's still early because there's still a lot of vehicles, limited conversions that used to take place in the past, and now it's like, it's close to like 200 a month. So I think it's picked up quite a lot, and then I think the president of NGC CNG can say more about the new stations coming on stream and so on. So I think there's quite a lot of work going on there.
Thank you very much, Lamarck Lo Quan, the president of the National Gas Company. Minister, some final comments. What are your words of encouragement to the national community?
Well, we have been, from an energy perspective, we have been in this business for over a century. We have been in the good times, we've been in the bad times, we've been in the in-between times. I see this as just another challenge. On the face of it, it looks as if it's one of the gravest challenges that society will be facing for the longest while. But I think the resilience of the species, the resilience of humans, the resilience of civilization will overcome it. From a purely economic perspective, it will have depressed energy prices for a while. As to how long that would be, it is still uncertain.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Franklin Khan, the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. We also had on the line earlier Mr. Mark Lo Quan, who is president of the National Gas Company. We're going to go to a very quick break, and we'll be right back with a report out of Guyana.
Even though school is closed, your child's SAA preparation does not stop. Let them learn math, language arts, creative writing and comprehension in the comfort and safety of your home. Using the JJ and Friends apps, workbooks and wall charts, all designed using the Ministry of Education's primary school curriculum and SAA 2019 to 2023 framework. Our program covers numbers, measurement, money, geometry, statistics, parts of speech, subject-verb agreement, conjunctions and joining sentences, active and passive voice, classical analysis, sentence analysis, direct and indirect speech, punctuation, spelling and vocabulary. Create the perfect learning environment in the safety of your home today. Plus, get a free Amazon Kindle Fire. Get your child fully prepared for SAA with the JJ and Friends SAA Success Series. Call now 800-READ.
The following message is brought to you by the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, at the forefront of energy. Practice good personal hygiene and protect yourself against the COVID-19 virus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water, scrubbing for at least 20 seconds, or in the absence of soap and water, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Avoid touching your face with your hands regularly. This is a lot harder than it sounds and requires conscious effort. However, the average person touches their face 23 times an hour, and about half that time they're touching their mouth, eyes and nose, the mucosal surfaces that COVID-19 infects. Cover coughs and sneezes with the inside of your elbow or upper arm. Stay home if you're feeling sick and seek appropriate medical guidance. It's up to you to protect yourself and your loved ones from the COVID-19 virus. The preceding message was brought to you by the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, at the forefront of energy.
This is Response to COVID-19. I'm Wesley Gibbings on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live online on Facebook. At this moment, we're going to switch our attention to Guyana. And on the line is Leron Brummel, who is no stranger to Trinidad media. He is now attached to NCN in Guyana. Leron, welcome to the program.
Hey, Wesley. Good evening. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Well, so far so good. I've been paying close attention, as you know, to the situation in Guyana. And there's actually a piece that's going to appear tomorrow by me, where I talk about Guyana facing the problem of COVID-19 and GCOM20. Give me an idea of what's happening there. What's this interaction, this interface between the political turmoil since the March 2nd election and the arrival of COVID-19?
Well, it's interesting, Wesley. In fact, let me say this. Guyanese have been largely following the guidelines set out. I think a lot of people are actually looking forward to being at home. So most people are following it. The supermarkets are empty, the streets are empty. Just really the essential services are what you see moving around the place at the moment. Gyms have closed. Businesses are closing a little earlier. But if you talk about the political, what's there, of course, politics plays a big part in everything. There will be some good and there will be some bad, but it's been largely responsible, as I said. The government has put systems in place just the same way Trinidad has been doing. Of course, Trinidad is a little bit more forward-thinking and faster in execution of their duties than we are here. The Pan American Health Organization yesterday had a little press briefing to update us and tell us, of course, in fact, what they've been doing is pushing the message, stay at home, wash your hands, maintain your distances, and that's largely been happening. There's not been too much of the criticism from the opposition in terms of the responses that have been happening. In fact, what actually happened, of course, because if you're talking about the actual issue of the elections happening at this point in time, and of course what we're seeing, parties have been putting their agents out at the location of the Guyana Elections Commission. There've been a lot of congregating, and they came in for some flack for that earlier today. I'm talking about the People's Progressive Party, the main opposition party. I've seen a statement earlier this afternoon, saying, we're committed, and they're asking people to be no more than 25 in looking out there. Of course, everyone has been keeping vigil at the Elections Commission, looking at the containers where the ballot boxes have been stored. But like I said, it's been largely responsible.
I know that during the court proceedings, and there was a hearing on the injunction today, that APNU AFC supporters have been maintaining a level of vigil as well. Did that take place again today?
Well, pretty much everybody's been doing it. In fact, there are tents set up around the Elections Commission, small tents where party supporters are there. And persons are posting online on Facebook. They're taking out pictures to show that, hey, we're out here, we're looking at it. If you look at it more of what has been happening, the PVC has a very effective public relations mechanism. So ever so often you see something popping up from them that says, hey, we're here, we're doing this, let's guard our democracy. In fact, you talk about guarding democracy. Today there's a billboard that came up that pretty much says that government and GCOM are trying to steal the election, which was pretty much the narrative that they've been having. So there's actually a big, about a 20-foot billboard strategically posted for people to see that just at a traffic junction.
Okay, Leron, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. I want to thank you very much. Remain vigilant. I know it's very difficult for media folks in Guyana these days. So wishing you all the best. Leron Brummel, NCN Guyana.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this evening's proceedings. I wish to thank Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Franklin Khan, and President of the National Gas Company, Mr. Mark Loquan, for bringing greater clarity to the issues challenging the country's energy sector. And of course, thank you very much to Leron Brummel for his update on the situation in Guyana. And thank you for joining us on TTT Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live online. I'm Wesley Gibbings. Good night and stay safe, please.